if we're habituated to anything, if pain is familiar, if it's imagined to be the way life is, just get on and deal with it, or uh, buck up, stiff upper lip, endure. If that is all that one has been taught to expect, and expectation is all a dynamic of projection. If we expect our way from the pain of yesteryear or century or yester life into the future, then we're going to expect our way into potential extinction as a species, which kind of probably isn't our best choice or most optimal choice. And it is, if for kids that have been mistreated as children and physically abused and hurt and punished repeatedly, if you try to walk up to one of them and pat them on the shoulder, they may flinch back and fear that you might hurt them the way they have felt they've been hurt or wounded or traumatized in the past. If you have no intention of any of that, you just want to be kind and help them recognize they're not alone in the world. It doesn't mean they're not going to imagine that your intention is to hurt them, and their fear would, in effect, potentially generate that experience. So what if you were walking up to pat them on the back and say, there, it's all okay. You are cared about, you're important, you're loved. And then their fear, they said, oh no, that's my mom or my dad that has hurt me and punished me in the past, and this person's going to hit me. They're not trying to be kind. They're going to hit me. So they take off and they run right into a concrete pillar or into a wall. And they say, oh gosh, look, this pain just proves they were trying to hurt me. Just, are we making sense that if you see this as a fractal for humanity as tribal ways of interpreting relational dynamics between them and other tribes or other nations? Is this a skipping record? Is this a recipe for a continuity of dysfunction rather than function? Iterative steps forward, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. Regenerating the problems, the pains, and the traumas of the abuses, and the ignorance and the destructive tendencies of the past, and recreating it in the future and rationalizing doing so. So we can learn everything if we're willing to look at the future and the past simultaneously and see it all as a whole continuity, all of the potential futures and all of the interpretations of the past, because the past wasn't some fixed thing that one person understands or even any nation understands. It is the recording, if you will, of all the interpretations of everybody from the past. So if we recognize that history is a recording of those interpretations of the past, and we just accept it as that, not as a truth, not as a fact, as a recorded interpretation that's facilitative of the evolution. It's facilitative of the evolution and the growth of the collective and each tribalized unit and each individual, then it's not an issue. And it's also not a truth. And it is grist for the mill. It has utility, and only the utility that it does, and it can be released without attachment or aversion, without holding on to it, either from shame, guilt, fear of its being repeated, or imagining that it could be repeated, or hating it for its wrongness. We can choose to transcend all of this illusion, all of these recordings that have been made collectively within the consensus consciousness of humanity, and all the tribes and all the nations and all the cultures and all the genders and all the peoples and all the age groups. We can choose to transcend all of that if we choose to. And if we do, is that liberation of a sort. If we've evolved sociology, political science, and psychology significantly, and as well as many other technologies and disciplines in the last 70 years, does it make sense that all of recorded history, all understood history up until that 70 years ago was understood through the lens of the past? How much have we learned in 70 years? And in every discipline, medical technology, uh, every area of science and every area of thought. So what we're getting at by saying that is, if someone was to look back from 1950 at how all of history up until that time had occurred, does it make sense that their interpretation would not be as potentially complete as if they were looking at it from 2022 with all that we learned since 1950? If we add to our current lens of 2022 view, if we look back and reinterpret every moment of history from the current lens of understanding, the current lens of knowledge, information, interpretive capacity, science, technology, philosophy, etc., does that literally mean that we interpret every moment of the history of humanity in its entirety, that it has a completely different meaning than it has been imagined to have been having for the past 100 million years? We've been interpreting it as we've been interpreting it for thousands or millions of years. And there isn't any right interpretation. Nobody's been right, nobody's been wrong. It's been an interpretation. And the question is, can we, through collective collaborative choice, generate a dynamic of interpretation that is sustainable, that's peaceful, that allows all of the reconciliation of all of those disparate points of view and motivations and fears or desires or motivations? Can we arrive at a collective understanding that is shareable in a constructive way in the time available with the resources and technologies available? Can we together arrive at those understandings?